Well, I just want to say a few words saying how happy I am that Alliance Française du Bengale is associated with that initiative. Thank you, Rina, to associate us with that. I'm very happy to conclude this specific month, this June month, with that webinar. We collaborate together since the beginning of KCC. In the past 2 years, you welcome some French artists with us, basically mostly for stage performance. So in this specific time of the COVID pandemic, stage is not the same, of course, but you, us, we are some organization here in Calcutta to continue to spread good vibes around, and I'm very of that collaboration. All the best for the panelists. I will be happy to hear you for the next 1 hour. Merci. Bonsoir. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for the wonderful collaboration. And now over to the panelists of Rina ma'am.
Thank you so much, Sravasti. And thank you, Alliance France. Thank you, Fabrice. You are a friend, almost a family to KCC. And thank you for always supporting us. Okay, going to the conversation. So this conversation today is an outcome of my own personal struggle and my own personal question that we thought is common to many people like me and like us in KCC. KCC is an organization which is still a very newborn baby, and we thought that if inclusivity is addressed from the very beginning of the center, it will be very good in the long run to come. And hence this conversation. So I'm thankful to Sumita and Anutama to agree to be answering my questions. I will apologize much in advance if I go wrong anywhere, because I am learning. That's the reason we named it Learning Together. So while I'm learning, we thought let everybody else also learn with us. I'll start with Sumita. Sumita, what are the visible and invisible behaviors that are common in organizational spaces?
Is this a question regarding discrimination? Visible and
Yes.
invisible discrimination? Okay. We all know about the visible discriminations, right? Like, I don't like you, and hence I will do everything that is under my control to make your life miserable.
Right.
So that is one way of making it. So if you are not from my religion, I will make your life miserable. If you are a Dalit, then I will make your life invisible. If you are mentally not really stable, as per my understanding, I will make your life invisible. Similarly, if your gender sexual standing is different from mine, I will also make your life miserable, I'm sorry. So that is one way of doing it. Like using wrong words, like amongst the colleagues, that can be one way of very visible discrimination. Spreading rumor. We all know about visible discriminations, but invisible discrimination is still more difficult to manage. Perhaps we don't even know when we do it. It's like when we think that only one way of living and one way of conducting yourself is the only way, and therefore everyone else should follow you, and whoever is not following you, you are not liking that person. You don't even know that you are not liking that person. Like in a group, and in having children, feeding for, doing things for the in-laws. And we continue doing that. And while doing that, we don't know that we are discriminating maybe one amongst us who is not married, who does not want to be married, who does not have a spouse, but a partner. And we forget to include that person in our gossips, in our conversations. we expect that a person who does not have a spouse is an unmarried, unattached person. Unmarried becomes unattached. But a person with a same sex or even opposite sex partner is attached very much, is in a relationship very much. Her, his, their home is a home, it's a family. We don't understand that. So these are the invisible signs of discrimination that we sometimes do, even not knowing that we are doing that. We will build up upon this. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And I really loved unmarried is equal to unattached. That's true.
Unattached.
Yes. So I'll move to Anutama, taking forward from this question. Is Anutama, what are the behaviors that are easily recognizable as trans or homophobia?
Well, I would first thank Kolkata Center for Creativity for holding this dialogue, because these dialogues are extremely important when we are trying to address the invisible discrimination. Because I would take from Shumita, what Shumita was saying, you know, most of the time it is not only about the phobia, it is also about denial. We just do not want to acknowledge that the other exists, as Shumita was very correctly saying. So I think the fear part comes much later. Homophobia, transphobia, these things could also be internalized by a person who's otherwise, living an unconventional life. So that's a different genre altogether. But I think there are times when we just want to reiterate only one identity, only one mode of living, only one kind of relationship. Also in organization, I can just share a few examples since we are talking about inclusivity in organization. If we go by the HR interviews, the way the questions are asked, even those are loaded. For example, are you married? Do you have children? So we can also reframe the question by asking who all are there in your family, because what exactly do I need to know in an interview? I need to know the name of a family member or a relational person, so that if there is an emergency, I can, contact. Or if there are any provisions for nominees, I can keep those names. For that, do I really need to talk about marriage or children? Or even if I have a concern about your responsibilities, because maybe it's a very high demanding job, I can simply put it like this, that, in this profile, you would not be able to take too many leaves. Let the other person decide, but mostly in our questions, we just do not even acknowledge that there could be other modes of living, there could be other identities. As far as transphobia and homophobia, since you mentioned about these things, from my own experience, I would suggest, and from my own clinical experience also, I would say that I was working with an academic institution where a student was told that you're studying hospitality management, you would be, sent for your internship to a hospital, and hospital administration, etc., requires you to dress up in a certain way to comply to a certain gender role. So there, that person was not comfortable. I mean, she was not comfortable, in a certain way, because she was a trans man, trans woman. So she said that, I'm sorry, I do not want to conform to this. And immediately she was told that in that case, your internship is cancelled. So, whenever we are trying to project the job profile or the other criteria or the other parameters as the fixed ones, as if you have to change your ways because it is important, otherwise, or you will not be successful in your work. And we try to impose certain expectations onto them. In fact, discriminatory behavior, visible behaviors, usually in the organization, people are a little careful about, but the invisible ones are so glaringly pleasant. I mean, sometimes even the silence is the loudest, I would say. So that's very much there, and that's far more disturbing. Even when we are conducting, workshops, even when we are conversing with each other, our language needs to change. Our language is homophobic. Why are you sitting always next to that girl? Are you a homo? We speak that language. In fact, even if a person is clear about or open about her sexual orientation, I remember in one occasion, a person told me in my clinic that, I live with my partner. I am, living with my female partner. Some of my colleagues know about that. They hesitate to go to the washroom with me, thinking that I will jump upon them. That's discrimination. That's homophobia. We usually stay with, people around us who are living heteronormative lives. We do not think that they would constantly jump upon us. I mean, if they want to violate, they can violate without, conforming to any reality. That's a different matter. But for, somebody who's not conforming to our expected parameters, we presume certain things about their sexual behaviors, about their relational behaviors. Also, we presume things about their work performances, and we try and connect these two constantly.
That's absolutely right. And I also feel that this behavior also comes from the fact that we do not understand, and hence the fear. And we do not even make an effort to understand, and hence the fear. So, continuing with this, I would also like to ask you, Anutama, that how these behaviors get generated? What's the real cause that we assume that okay, this person will jump onto me because he has a certain kind of orientation. So how
Mhm.
these behaviors gets generated?
It's a lovely question, Ria. A lot of people will be offended with my answer. I would not be worried about somebody's sexuality unless I want to be a part of it. And I'm scared of myself. Maybe I want to actually jump. Maybe it's my need. And thus I'm scared. I'm scared to face what might come from myself. Otherwise, why should I have a problem? You may be an asexual person also. Why should it trouble me? It troubles me when your desire, your presence, your claim, your personhood is titillating something that I have been denying for years within myself. I do not want to confront. And trust me, homophobia, transphobia, we are all, some way or the other, sometimes carrying the burden of it because we live in a society which tells us about only one narrative. Ria, we have always heard Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge. We have never heard Dilwale Dilwale Le Jayenge. We have never heard Dulhania Dulhania Le Jayenge. Since we do not have the other narratives, so we want to conform to those narratives. We are torn apart because our desires, our need to be who we are, and our need to be approved and appreciated are constantly into conflicts. And there, when I see that somebody is living life exactly in his own terms and doing things the way she wants to do, claiming a certain gender identity the way it comforts this person, maybe I'm scared because somewhere even I wanted to be that. Somewhere even I wanted to hold that position. And your existence challenges my complacency, my compromises.
Absolutely. And before I move to Sumita for actually to talk about bit about gender
Yeah.
and sexuality, I would continue to ask one more thing because that's where I come, Anutama, that as the director of the organization, I feel that my own team has certain kind of phobia, and hence this whole exercise has started. Like we had a wonderful workshop with our team in the morning with Sumita to understand the basics and how we can understand the whole concept of sex, gender, and sexuality, which was such a wonderful thing. But because I will honestly tell you that I was a bit scared to do this conversation on a public platform. But after the morning session, I was so relaxed because I understood what it means. And now I'm more free to ask questions because I understand a bit part of it. But it's again a theoretical knowledge. So I will not say that, I've really understood the whole aspect around it. So tell me that they're all grown up and this phobia is so deep rooted that some of our colleagues were not even comfortable coming into this conversation of the morning, and they were a little uncomfortable with what's happening, what are we talking, and we never had these kind of open conversations around sex, sexualities. So and we can't even differentiate that what is sex and what is gender. And here we are suddenly talking about a variety of things around it. So it was a bit overwhelming for it is overwhelming for a lot of people. So tell me, as a person who is at a certain position in the organization, how do I deal with it? Because from the very beginning, I always wanted to have inclusive team members also, but I'm scared to bring in somebody from a who does not conform to a set norm that people expect. So before bringing in any person in the family of my team, I really want that we should first be, aware, and how we should not actually feel discomfort around the person, so that that doesn't translate to that person. So tell me, how do I deal with it? uh, uh, I'm talking to you, Anutama. How do as an organization
I
head,
didn't realize that.
huh,
Okay.
how as an
I think
organization head I should
firstly
deal
I
with
would, yeah, I would first congratulate you, Ria, for even thinking about it seriously, because very few organizational heads actually acknowledge the fact that, I might not have, adequate knowledge, which is absolutely fine. But I want to create a conducive environment so that we can bring members who would feel comfortable in the organization. I think that the need for this dialogue, the need that you're acknowledging it
Onutama, we
is
can't hear
commendable.
you.
Hello, hello. Is it audible now?
Onutama, yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
is this
is.
audible now? Yeah.
Thank you.
So I was congratulating Rhea, because very few organizational heads would actually acknowledge this, that we need to create a conducive environment for all the members. I mean, this whole requirement is felt by you, which is great, Rhea. I think we can start from the top. For example, I'm going absolutely through the organizational terms and conditions. When you recruit somebody, usually there is an agreement which is signed by the employee. So when we are writing the organizational protocols, if one can also incorporate that any kind of discriminatory behavior pertaining to gender, sexual orientation, relational stance, etc., would be handled with zero tolerance. So a person is signing that. Sometimes the dotted lines need to be clearly told and signed. At the same time, while conducting workshops, we have to use inclusive language. For example, we have to also use that if you have a family member, partner, spouse, slash slash slash, so we need to do that. We need to incorporate that in our mode of communication. Also, as an organizational head, if I ever speak to the team, I need to create that environment where you can comfortable in your own, in your own gender position, in your own relationship position. I'm not saying that we have to constantly rub it on each other's face, because when we are, doing a workshop on, let's say, for example, I'll just give you one example again from my clinical sessions. One person once told me that, again, she was not comfortable to dress up in a certain way. She was not a cisgendered person. So she said that, when I'm working, I am basically a camera person. She was a cinematographer. She said, when I'm running around, I'm obviously not going to wear a sari. I'm obviously going to be in my trouser and my t-shirt, because that's my work profile's demand. But in a social gathering, I would like to dress up like a, beautiful woman. I know that I can carry myself, so why not? So maybe even in the informal gatherings of an organization, one can be encouraged to come the way he or she wants to come. These are some, small gestures that can be encouraged. And also, I think in the manual, in the HR manual, in the regular workshops, we have to create an environment where one does not feel threatened by the other. Any kind of bullying behavior, as Shomita was very correctly saying, the moment we are seeing somebody different, we become intolerant. So these intolerant behaviors, no matter how the other person behaves, if this is not really interfering with my work demand, why should I at all get into that? Why should I at all even interfere? So if that
Hmm.
is there, in the organizational atmosphere, and if it percolates down from the top, I think the employees, even if they have inherent phobia, even if they have some sort of resistance, they would not be able to bring it out. The way we had to secure women through Vishaka guidelines, etc. I think even for gender sexuality, we need to have very firm management where these behaviors would not be tolerated. I mean, these ones would be somewhat, discouraged, would be treated with absolutely no, there is no provision of such things. I mean, it should be clearly told and signed, documented.
Hmm.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much, Anutama. I'll now move to Sumita, starting from where we did in the morning. That because our audience is consisting of people from different kind of backgrounds and knowledge and awareness. So for their sake, because some must be very learned in these things, but some may be very at the base like me. So can you have a little bit conversation about why dialogues about gender and sexuality are necessary. And before that, what is gender and sexuality?
Well, gender, I guess we all know. First of all, I think I want to add something with Anuttama. One is, of course, the organizational space should be open and acceptable, accepting everyone. And we may begin from a very simple thing, like asking for preferred personal pronouns, like not assuming that a male appearing person identifies himself as a man. Let's not assume. First of all, for me, the first step is not assuming, asking. If I have any discomfort, I must be able to go and ask that how are you feeling comfortable to communicate with me? That is point number one for me. And another thing which I am asking Anuttama also this question, I am allowed to do that, right? Okay. So nowadays, should we really use the words homophobia and transphobia? Because the word phobia, as far as I understand, and many like, phobia is something which connects the ideas with what should I say, like, this is something which is beyond me. I cannot control myself. I cannot control this fear. This is irrational fear.
Your voice is breaking, Shumita.
Irrational fear for dogs. Irrational fear. My voice is breaking. Okay. So what I'm trying to say, yeah, is this irrational fear homophobia or transphobia? Or is this something which I do not want to accept, which I do not want to acknowledge? So should we, instead of calling it homophobia or transphobia, can we refer to this particular phenomenon as trans negativity or homo negativity? This is just a suggestion.
No, this is a lovely question. We say phobia,
yeah. So we just can think about it. Like when we say phobia, we kind of give it away. Okay, fine, this is irrational. And sometimes maybe I will get over it. But you will not get over it until and unless you seriously want to get over it.
Yeah, absolutely right. I completely agree with you, Shumita. In fact, this is also something that I take a note of this, because we have been using this. I mean, usually this is how it is referred, but the nuances of it, the way you just mentioned that, phobia is a certain, it actually pathologizes, but it is not necessarily a pathological stance. It is a stance taken by an individual which is quite movable, quite changeable. So it's not that, firm stance, I cannot control it, it is beyond my capacity to control. No. So naturally we can definitely reframe by homo negativity, trans negativity. In fact, we also talk about homo denial, trans denial, because sometimes homo ignorance, trans ignorance. In fact, we can also incorporate these phrases. And I really liked the thing, as you said, that how would you like to be called? How would you like to be pronounced? That's wonderful. In fact, even in the forms, Ria, when you were asking that in the organization, what can we do? Maybe we, while we ask somebody to fill it up, there are organizations which are still providing us with male and female, only these two binaries. I think we need to create boxes without binaries, where a person is free to write the preferred gender, the identified gender, the comfortable gender.
Yeah, and I think I'll add here that one of the even worse thing is that we write male, female, others.
As if that's the third grade.
Yeah.
And they're only
actually we call it so, like the first the first sex, the second sex, and now comes the third sex.
Right.
So
yeah, actually, so it's so much it's so much there. It's so deep rooted in our own language, in our own,
exactly.
We unknowingly sometimes, we propagate the stereotypes.
Right.
We live in a heterosexist world. The heterosexist world, we have created the heterosexist world in our mind. and
True.
we are never free from it. So whatever we say, and well, I will come to gender, but let me tell you something first. Like in my workspace, I've always seen that there are questions like, okay, so these two girls are in a relationship. Okay, fine, that I understand, but who among them is the man? No one among them is the man. Both of them are women. If one is man, then it would have been a heterosexual relationship. Well, there are trans men, and there are cis partners. But there are also two cis girls, two cis women who are in a relationship, and we don't need to find who is the man in the relationship, but we have to have a man. Similarly, there are questions like, okay, so lesbians, they do. I think I'm allowed
Yeah.
to say these things. So the two lesbians, they do not have a penis. No one amongst them have a penis. So how do they do it? Do they always use dildo? As if you have to have a physical penis, or you have to have a replica of the penis to have a fulfilling sexual life. Where does these ideas come from? These ideas come from the heterosexist understanding of this world, that you have to have a penis, you have to be a man, one in the relationship has to wear the pants. No, both of them wear saris or skirts or hot pants or pants, whatever.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So let's now come to the differences between what is sex, gender, and sexuality.
Again. Okay. So sex, in my understanding, when we say that the sex of a person is male or female, or we usually refer to the biological or the genitalia and the reproductive organs that a person carries within, along with the hormones that they have and the chromosomes. So everything put together makes a person a male or a female. And there are many people who are somewhere in between, or maybe if we say in between, I think that is not even a proper expression. They are not even in between. They are in other places, not defined by the maleness, or not defined by the femaleness. They are in other places. So we call them intersex. They are somewhere else, in a different place. They may have some sexual organs like a male or like a female, or a combination, or something totally different. So we have man, male, female. We don't have man in sex. We have male, female, and the intersex. So, but then comes in the society, and then comes in patriarchy. And it says, it tells us that not only you have to be a male, you have to be a man. So the process of making a male baby into a man, a macho man, the process is called the gendering process. So if male is the sex, then man becomes the gender. If female is the sex, then woman becomes the gender. Intersexed, we are not interested in them. The society is not interested in them. Patriarchy is not interested in them. So from here, from sex to gender, so a person who is born with a penis is supposed to be macho, is supposed to ride a bike, is supposed to chedkhani with women. Okay, is supposed to take the dominant role, is supposed to be the more sexed person, more desirous. And the exact opposite will be the woman. So from male to man, from female to woman. And then in gender, we have the man, the woman, and again, many people, many persons, many identities that are floating, that are moving here and there. It's a huge sphere. I used to understand this sphere as a straight line from man to woman. But a friend of mine, a trans man, he very beautifully explained that why it has to be a single line. It's a sphere, it's a space.
Very true.
Yeah, it can be anywhere, up, down, here, there, anywhere. It gives you the mobility to move around. It gives you the space to express yourself. You can be a man. There is nothing wrong in being a man. There is nothing wrong in being a trans man or a trans woman or a woman. And there is nothing wrong in being nothing. None of the above. So the space gives us this freedom to be none of the above. To become the non-binary person, the non-binary gender, the gender fluid, the gender queer. Or not even that. I don't want to talk about my gender. This is who I am and let me deal with it. Be happy or be sad with it. So this way, I'm sure, Anutama, you have a lot of such persons
Oh yes,
talking to
absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't need much, just the space to be themselves.
Absolutely.
I need
They
just
just
the
don't need a
space to be
box around
myself.
them. Yeah.
Absolute. They don't want any kind of boxes. That's all. And if a person has that strength in himself, herself, themselves to live outside the boxes, then all we can do is let them and don't drag them inside. I was talking about the Cinderella syndrome in the morning, like how a person has to cut the toes off or the heels off to fit into the slippers, which will eventually make her the princess or the queen. So these people perhaps don't want to fit into that shoe. They don't want to. I don't want to be a princess or a queen. So from sex, we enter into gender. And from gender, we can see how it is pushing ourselves towards sexuality. So if patriarchy asks us to become a man or a woman, heteropatriarchy asks us to perform like a man or a woman, the sacred most task of having sex and producing babies. Small little males and females who will eventually become mans and womans, and then they will again reproduce and again. So it's going round and round and round and round. And therefore, in the similar way, like the intersex people are cut out, the trans people are cut out, people who are not heterosexual are also cut out. We don't want them because they will not breed. This is very difficult for us to understand that in 2020, we are still talking about breeding. But please, I know that there are more than 100 people in this webinar today. Please look at yourselves and please, मतलब झांक के देखिए, अपने कुर्ते के अंदर झांक के देखिए. What is there? Isn't breeding the most important thing? Are we not taught that breeding is the most important thing? And therefore a barren woman is the gali. The ugliest gali that you can give to a woman is a barren woman. So breeding is everything. And heteropatriarchy is luring us, saying that if you do not follow me, then you become that barren woman. You become that barren man. Na mard. You become that na mard. And so please follow me. Please follow the rules that I had made. Whereas sexuality is all about expressing yourself sexually. That's all it is there. And it is also a playing field. It is also not boxed. Not even into hetero and homo and bi. Sexuality is also an open space. I see sexuality as a river. I see sexuality as a continuum of moments of desire, of happiness, of excitement, and also of deep contemplation. Sexuality is deep contemplation, looking really inside myself. कुर्ते के अंदर एकदम से झांक के देखना है sexuality. Reena, is it okay?
Yes, absolutely. It's
Thank
so
you so
beautifully
much.
put. Yeah. Thank you so much for this.
Yes.
So I'm sure that a lot of people will gain a lot of perspective from this conversation, and I'm really glad that this is happening today, especially, and in a platform where many people are able to be part of it and will be continuing to be part of it through our Facebook page also, because they can continue to revisit and listen to this conversation. So moving on again, I'll go back to my own space, which is Kolkata Center for Creativity. Like at times I have witnessed in not in my own center but at many other places this happening, that people whose sexuality does not conform to hetero patriarchal normatives, when they become very expressive in their appearances, often it becomes subject of special interest in an organizational space. How can we keep
Mhm.
everyone welcome and create a safe space for everyone in this situation?
Yeah,
I
this
think
is.
I will ask both of you one by one to answer this.
I think would Shomita like to respond first?
Oh no, Anutama, I'm talking for a long time. Please.
No, I'll just first add to something that you were saying, Shumita. It was lovely, again, listening to you, and it was so beautifully explained. I just would like to add one more thing to what you were just saying, and then I would move to Rina's question. That sexuality is not about genitality. We often mix these two. It's not about the genitals. This is just an add on that sexuality is our entire being. We need to feel liberated. Mostly, sexuality is also about our total constructive forces. No matter how we dress up, how we talk, when we are comfortable with our own positions, with our own self, even that is sexuality. Is not necessarily bound between two individuals or me and the other. It is basically with me and myself. Sometimes it is experienced in quietness. So I can be a gender quiet person. I don't necessarily have to conform
Hmm.
to any kind of boxes, and I really don't need a signifier. So when you were moving to your question, Arena, when you were saying that, in particularly in organizational space, how can we make it comfortable for those who are coming from, a certain position? I would say, as Shumita already had mentioned, that we can ask that person primarily that how you want to be identified, how do you want to be talked to, how you want to be referred to. That's one. In fact, we have already talked about the organizational protocols, the written part of it. At the same time, if we could also see that whenever somebody is expressing the self in a certain way, we don't necessarily need to have a signifier. Sometimes we just
Hmm.
refer by a signifier, which is very problematic. That woman who has a female partner, that man who's a little gayish, just through our, it's like it becomes a figure of speech almost. It becomes a signifier. We don't necessarily need to have these signifiers. Like even today, we refer somebody as that tall, dark person. Why these signifiers? We don't even realize that we are stereotyping. We are still discriminating. We are still making the other person feel, somewhat small. So I think the language is very, very important here. And also, we have to take cues from others. Say, for example, when we are together, when we are holding meetings, when we are holding conversations, maybe at times we can have a conversation with the other people who are there, who are non-conformists. I would put it like that. I don't even use the term alternative, because who's me to decide who's regular and which is alternative? So
Absolutely.
I usually don't use that phrase. So I would say who's not conforming. Let me have a word with this person, Ria. Let me ask this person that is there any experience that you have had so far? Do you think as an organizational head, we still need to incorporate certain changes? Is there any area where you felt uncomfortable so far? I think these free feedbacks are extremely important, because again, we presume a lot of things. We also presume that this could be uncomfortable for this person. That might not be uncomfortable for this person. I'll give you another example. I know about another situation where a man who was having a relationship with another man at that point of time, who was very jokingly told by a male colleague that, "अरे तुम चूड़ियाँ क्यों नहीं पहन लेते जिस तरह से बात करते हो?" Then he laughed and he said, "सोने की तो दाम बहुत है, तुम बना क्यों नहीं देते?" So he had that sense of humor. He could handle it this way, but I would take it as an HR issue. I do not think this is only an individual's issue. An employee cannot I mean, should not go through this sort of, remarks. I mean, should not experience this kind of remarks in an organizational space. So if there is a discriminatory behavior happening, bullying behavior happening, the employee should feel free to go and talk to the higher authority as much as possible. That open door policy, that clarity of protocol is extremely important here. And also, as I said, the signifier. In fact, when Shumita was talking about sexuality, I think this is a discourse that we have often had. I mean, even Shumita and I, we have had discussions over it in other occasions, particularly those who are fluid in terms of their sexuality, in terms of their gender positioning. We have more problems with them. We still want to categorize, and we want to be somewhat settled with a particular identity, with a particular gender positioning. Okay, so fine, you are a lesbian. Okay, so fine, you're a gay. Okay, so fine, you are, you're a trans person. Now suddenly, if that person behaves in a different way or goes for another kind of a relational stance, we become absolutely confused, because we had already made some arrangement in our brain, we had already categorized them. Now if we have to recategorize them, that becomes a stressor, which is why I genuinely believe we have to stop using such categories, such boxes. We do that, we do these social groupings for our own convenience. Maybe we have to challenge that unidimensionality, we have to challenge that linearity. If we could challenge that, if we could at least understand that there can be ambiguous positions, there can be positions where a person is not really going to be conforming to today's truth tomorrow, because life changes. Perhaps it will be easier for me also to accept that person on myself, because it can also happen to me. There is no other. It's all about us here. Is Ria there?
Sorry, my yes, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anutama. And
Sure.
there are many questions coming in between, some of which I think you are answering already while you were, talking about talking just now. I'll just say this to the people who are sending the question, that there are two things. One, we are addressing questions right now which are more or less within the organizational space, because otherwise it will become an unlimited conversation. And secondly, we will definitely request both our panelists to answer some of these questions for us later, and we will get back to you with answers. So please do excuse us if we are not able to address your question. There is this one question definitely I would like to take, not question actually, it's more of a personal situation which I also see within my situation, hence I'm taking it immediately, is Shrabana. Shrabana is saying that it's not a question exactly, but I fight every day for keeping boy cut hair and preferring to wear shirts and jeans more than saris or salwars. I'm frequently made uncomfortable for wearing what I want, branding me manly, even making assumptions about my sexuality. It hurts my self-confidence. Now, that is also one situation I have to deal with, that if somebody is feeling in general the way she is, where you cannot really point out at one person or two people that they made you feel like this, how do you handle that? Sumita, would you like to take this?
Well, I think this is a question for Anutama. Add something, but this is primarily Anutama.
Okay. Well, I think, thank you, Shrobana, for bringing this question to us, firstly. I have learned from my own experience that I have no control over the world at the end of the day. I can only try my level best not to be reduced and affected by it. So I can use my own filters so that I am not going to be damaged by the remarks. I know this one, I always believe in this, that I cannot run away from my truth. If I want to dress up in a certain way, if I want to have a certain kind of relationship, if I want to live in a certain, locality, if I want to have a certain demographic reality, that's my choice. That's what I would like to be. That's what I would like to hold on to. So Shravana, those people who are uncomfortable with your haircut or the way you dress up, let them go to a therapist and deal with their discomfort. It's not your baggage. It's not your burden. So I think even those, I mean, when I would take Shumita's words here, I would refer you, Shumita, that those who are homo negative, trans negative, I think they should go to somebody. They should go and talk. In fact, we do receive those people. We often have family members coming to us who are struggling with their children's
Hmm.
choices and they are not happy and they want to talk about it. They want to understand it. And I understand their concern genuinely. Sometimes they are saying that I'm fine, but how the society would react. Even sometimes, when somebody is not conforming to a certain gender role or a certain relationship expectation, people may have this fear, particularly the parents or the family members, that how others would deal with them when I would not be there, how would they would live their lives, etc. So maybe those discomforts, those concerns, they should take up with another person. They should remove their blocks by talking to another person. We have to understand that the way I am, I should try and be comfortable in that without being too apologetic because I'm being asked, because there are questions around me.
Shramana, I am trying to slightly expand your question and include something else in this. Like, it seems like you are a PAGFB, person assigned gender female at birth, and you are struggling with short hair and shirts and jeans. Imagine a PAGMB, person assigned gender male at birth, struggling with long hair, bindi, kajal, sari maybe. That is her. I'm not calling that this person his, but her. That is her expression in a workspace. Now I'm opening this question to a slightly larger audience. That please imagine what can happen to this person. We are still comfortable, somewhat comfortable. In
We are
fact,
losing your voice.
we all okay. All three of us, like Anuttama, Reena, and I, are PAGFBs, and we have short hair. So this is somewhat acceptable in the society that women PAGFBs can dress up like men and can aspire to be a little manly, because being manly is something which is going up the ladder. So it is still acceptable. Like मेरी बेटी तो मेरी बेटा जैसा है, बेटी तो बेटा जैसा है. So that is still acceptable. But when the beta wants to perform her gender as a female, what happens then? How many workspaces would allow? And here I will be slightly nudging Reena to also think about such people in your workspace. So it is not just about cutting your hair short. It is also about wearing it long. Jura, bindi, mehendi, and everything.
Very important, yeah.
Absolutely. It's giving me a lot of thought. I think I'm really going to stay here awake tonight. Yeah, it's quite a intense conversation, and it's actually opening up so many things, that so many layers that we never actually even think of or forget about addressing or accepting them. I'll take, because we are now getting close to our time, we'll try to take 2-3 quick questions. This is something, a statement which I really personally don't want to so much dwell on, but I still want to take it, is that Mahima is saying that I did not want to point it to a particular gender, but I have personally often seen men being more homophobic or believing in this gender bias thing than women. Is there any reason about it?
I think Shumita should respond to this.
No, I don't think so. Maybe in Mahima, in your reality, there are more
Yeah.
men who are homonegative than women, but believe me, there are ample women extremely homonegative and trans negative in this country
I think
or
so.
in
In
this
terms of
world.
negativity, we have absolute equality, Shumita.
Gender, no bias anywhere.
Yeah, I
No
also
bias
agree with you.
anywhere.
Even I think it's true, but sometimes I think this is probably Mahima's question could be connected to what you were just addressing, Shumita, that sometimes men they have more burden on them to become the man,
Yes,
the hetero patriarchal man. So which is
more to
why if
lose.
they have
Yeah.
yeah they have more to lose, exactly, which is why we have often seen that if a woman is preferring to be a trans man, she has lesser struggle than a man
Yeah,
who's
he has
preferring
lesser
to be a trans
struggle.
woman. Yeah, so this is also we have often seen. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, in this conversation, we have not really touched upon transgender or Hijra community per se. But there is one bit of question which I'm taking because I feel that it's somewhere is a perception, and a lot of our unacceptability towards different sexualities are also deriving from this. It is by Ayushi Ghosh. Ayushi is saying this question is for Dr. Anutama. Do you think the Hijra community is some way responsible for the fear among people for transgenders?
Oh, no, I don't think so, honestly. Because this is also, we have to understand transgender and hijra are not synonymous. I think Shumita, I'm sure, had discussed this in details in the workshops, and I'm sure later, I'm not getting into that detail, but for the timing, I would just say this much that we have quite quite a few confusion about the identities here. Hijras, I mean, that's a profession, that's also a community, they have a different role to play, they earn in a certain way, they have a certain a professional community, I mean a community related appearance. Now what I would say is, yes, at times they try and take money, and they create certain conversations which are not very pleasant, I understand, but we also have to see the history there. We also have to understand that somewhere these people have been deprived of for such a long period. Today when Shumita was asking that can we allow somebody with a joda, with a bindi, with a long hair, a man, and then apparently a man who's by birth a man, in an organizational space, we were thinking. So imagine people who are non-conforming to a certain gender identity, particularly those who are choosing the profession, I mean, who are being a part of the Hijra community, they have their immense struggle to even earn their regular livelihood. Again, they are also going through a lot of workshops, changes, etc. There are people who are also trying to make them behave in a certain way. They are communicating things so that there can be empowerment in a different way. But I think these are all our intellectualizations of trans negativity and homo negativity. We try and put the whole burden onto the other again in order to justify what I am doing and how I am discriminating. Let us not put the burden onto the other. If I am negative, I may not be you, but I have no right to criticize you. I have no right to deny you. I think we can start the journey from there. For that reason, I don't have to behave like you. I don't have to speak your language, but I have no right to be silent.
And as far as the Hijra community persons are concerned, it is also something we should keep in our mind that they know that we are scared of them. As simple as that. Because we are scared of the other. And the Hijra is the epitome of other in front of me. And the Hijra person, she only has that scare to defend herself. So she will try to scare me because she is scared herself. It, for her, maybe offense becomes the best defense. And I, in my position, in my perfectly secured, privileged position, I look at her and I think, oh my God, this person can give me such a scare. Oh my God, how bad, how wrong, how aggressive she is. I blame her. But can I ever think of the loss that she, I guess, feels. So I'm totally, absolutely with Anuttama when she says that this is our intellectual process. This is the intellectualization of my discrimination. I'm trying to justify my discrimination.
Absolutely. But this was a very valid question, because within my own organization also I have faced this statements point blank without even blinking the eye. People say this thing, and that's the reason I took this. Thank you so much to both of you for answering it so wonderfully. We're almost at, we'll take two more questions. One is from Meghna. I would like to ask Anuttama ma'am about the role of discourse in creating and perpetuating transphobia or homophobia in the minds of people, as she was talking about the way a sentence should be presented, which makes a lot of difference.
Yeah. Yes, I think this is also not only our, the way we speak, the way we are conducting ourselves, also the things that we read, the, popular creative medium, the kind of texts that are given to us, the kind of films that we usually watch. We are always seeing only one dominant narrative. We are always reading one dominant narrative. That's a major problem. In fact, I often wonder, Reena, you can also think about, I'm sure Shumita can also give her thoughts to it, that in most of the films which are right now dealing with, relationships between two men, two women, we often see that it ends at a sad note, when maybe the other person is dying or they are separated. I remember even in dialogues, I have had conversations with our friends over there that make other narratives. They can happily live ever after. Even they can have breakups and they can live with another person happily. So let us have a regular narrative. They are not the victims, they are not the deprived ones. So I think in the discourse, we have to incorporate realities where we are not unknowingly punishing the other. When we create such creative narratives, in our deeper self, we are presuming that they cannot have a happy life. Oh, come on. If they're choosing an unconventional path, I'm sure they would be deprived of happiness or they would be punished by the society. So as a film director or as a storyteller, it's not the society who are punishing them. I am punishing them, representing the society, because I think they cannot be happy. I think so in our own language, in our creative formats also, we have to incorporate different narratives. We have to incorporate the narratives where we can have regular stories, regular livelihood stories, regular other struggles, where whenever we are showing a couple or whenever we are talking about a couple who are non-conforming to our, usual parameters, we don't have to again segregate them, tag them with some sad saga. I think that is also very important.
And that's why Shubh Mangal Jyada Savdhan, with all its pitfalls, I should say that it really reached somewhere, that it is a regular story.
It, so that's a recommendation.
Okay.
It is. Okay.
It's a regular story to be of the speaker like any other person. I liked that. Regularity, regularness.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really wonderful way. And I think this actor only can carry off this kind of movie. So he started with Sperm Donor and he really actually is moving in the right direction. I'll take my last question now, which is very sad for me also. I mean, I'm feeling that, so many people have so many nice things to ask because they themselves are dealing with them everyday basis, and the sort of clarity that we are getting is really beautiful. So Krishna Chakrabarti is saying, how we can take a stand when someone is being bullied because of being queer in front of us anywhere, being belonging or not belonging to non-heteronormative sexuality.
I think Shumita can respond to this.
Take a stand. Just stand up. Just stand up and say, I will not let anyone bully this person. Just like I will not let anyone bully the slight small frame child or the bachcha jo haklata hai, or someone like that. Just there's no difference. Stand against the bully whenever you can. not just for queer people, but for anyone. Stand against the bullying.
Yes, absolutely. Because we become a part of the bully in order to practice that power. We think by
Absolutely.
become a part of the group who are bullying, I would be power, I would also be enjoying that power. So I think we have to break this power hierarchy, this dynamics whenever possible. This hegemony needs to be broken.
Yeah.
And I just want to add something, just one word, that many a times we have come to know that people who are part of a bullying gang, who are bullying the queer people, they themselves have some queer intention or queer desire, and to and they're afraid that those things will get expressed, and therefore they join the gang. That
Yeah,
is
I
It's a
also,
think,
very, very
yeah,
yeah,
that is that
Anutama
also
also
happens.
mentioned that. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
Anutama also mentioned that in the beginning, so that's very nice.
Yeah.
Though I said I will not take more question, but I'm finally taking one more because this is coming from a person I know is from museum background. She's working in museums, and
Mhm.
this is important from the museum perspective. Do organizations need to have all gender bathroom in their space in order to avoid discrimination?
Well,
Yeah.
this is a very complicated, and it's really very difficult to see that, because a transgender, there are demand for transgender toilets, and then again transgender toilets, who this transgender is. Is it a trans man? Is it a trans woman? Is it a non-binary person? Who this transgender is? A trans man may not feel comfortable sharing a toilet with a trans woman. So if you ask me, then I will say, can we really have toilets non-specific?
Hmm.
This is just a question.
Hmm.
Can we make toilets comfortable? Can we make toilets hassle-free and non-threatening also? Can an organization do that, so that we don't need to have gender segregated toilets? Because gender segregation in toilets is really truly difficult.
I mean, infrastructurally, I think that could be quite a challenge. So I think if it is gender
Hmm.
inclusive and conducive in every possible sense,
Yes,
that's much more
yes, and
acceptable.
also প্রতিবন্ধীর ইংরেজি কি ভুলে গেছি।
Some
অন্যতম
disability,
প্রতিবন্ধীর
disability,
ইংরেজি কি disability
disability.
friendly, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And if you can
disability.
make it disability friendly also.
So I had this lovely experience in Sydney in February. I went to this museum, and mostly what we assume is that okay, all gender bathroom is only one or two, and rest are male and female bathrooms. But this particular museum was absolutely opposite. So if you want male or female separate bathroom, please go to the X floor. Rest are all gender bathrooms. So I was really amazed to see, wow, this is really, putting a point across. Like in our own organization also, we have only one bathroom which is gender neutral. But when I saw this, I said, wow, these people have really made it a point that you are awkward, we are not. which is amazing. So thank you so much. I'm very sorry to those people whose questions we could not take. We'll try to address as much as possible. And I think I think some of the people commenting that if we can have more and more such conversations, I am sure it doesn't help to have it only once. It will be required to have more and more such conversation, not only limited to KCC, but at many platforms across nations, across cities, across the world. So thank you so much, Anutama. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, Sumita. It was really a delight to speak to both of you. And the morning session was definitely a very good start to the evening session. Thank you everybody for joining. I'm giving it back to Sravasti, who's back now. Otherwise, she'll tell us all that you're not allowing me to leave. So please, over to you.
On behalf of ACC, I would like to thank all of you who have joined us through webinar and through Facebook Live. You can see the live in our Instagram page as well. I would personally like to thank, and also on behalf of ACC, I would like to thank Srina Dewan to hold such space in organization, to create, to survive.
And again, Shumita Di and Anupama Di, a very, very thank you for being here, for giving your time, for enriching us. We hope, KCC hopes to get you once more. And good night, stay safe during this COVID. Yeah, there is no post-COVID, so stay safe and hope we will be more inclusive. As though Shumita Ji said there is no inclusivity as LGBTQ is within us, but yeah, probably will be more open. Thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, KCC, and thank you, Reena, specifically.
Yeah, and I would like to thank again KCC, Reena, Shrabusti for bringing us together. Shumita also, because I got to hear Shumita through this platform after a long time. So it was also a delight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anupama.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.